It started with the sound of our coffee machine choking. That weird, sputtering wheeze it makes when it tries to brew but there's no water left. Lorna stood there in her silk robe, staring at it like it had betrayed her. I was behind her in the hallway watching her shoulders tense up over something so small. She didn't know I was there yet. I didn't say good morning. I didn't ask about her sleep. I didn't offer to fix the machine. I just waited. Because this morning I wasn't going to fix anything. I was done being the household's emergency emotional janitor. Lorna finally turned around. Her expression snapped into that detached, practiced blankness she'd been wearing for months now. The kind that said, don't touch me. Don't ask. Don't notice. But I noticed. I noticed everything. How she didn't hug me when I got that promotion. How she turned her cheek when I leaned in after dinner. How her phone never faced upward anymore. How she started wearing perfume that wasn't on our bathroom shelf. How I hadn't heard her really laugh in our house since February. She opened the fridge. You used the last of the oat milk again, she said flatly. I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to be dramatic. I just didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. For the first time in a long time I realized how little I spoke unless I was responding to her. How often I moved around her like I was auditioning to stay in the room. She turned clearly annoyed. Darvin? Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I slid the drawer open, pulled out a folded paper from beneath the cutlery organizer, and placed it silently on the counter. Her eyes dropped to it. She blinked. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Then she reached for it like it was something fragile. Something ticking. It was a single-page document. Not fancy. Not from a lawyer. Not yet. At the top, it read, Request for divorce discussion, Darvin M. Just typed. Simple. Centered. No accusations. No drama. I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to catch her off guard with some public confrontation. I just wanted to end the silent war we'd both been fighting in our heads. When she looked back up at me, her face was pale. And then, just like that, the breath in the kitchen changed. It went from tight to panicked. She stepped back like someone had pushed her. Her hands shook. No, she whispered. No, Darvin, what is this? She reached for me, but stopped halfway as if her body didn't know how to close the distance anymore. You can't be serious, she said, her voice trembling. You're doing this over what, exactly? You've barely said anything lately, you've just been quiet and weird and I said nothing. Just watched her unravel. And then it happened. Her legs gave out. She actually fell to her knees on our cold tile floor, robe half open, bare knees against the stone, hands clutching the paper like it could erase itself if she begged hard enough. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't mean for it to feel like this. I've been overwhelmed. I didn't realize how far it had gone. Please don't do this. Please. Just talk to me. Please. The same woman who hadn't touched me in nearly a year. Who rolled away from me every night. Who kept whispering R on the phone when she thought I was in the garage. Now she was begging? I stood there watching my wife break like a wine glass on tile. And I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. I didn't say anything that morning. Just turned around, walked back to the bedroom and closed the door softly behind me. I didn't leave. Not yet. But I didn't stay the same either. She wanted to talk? Fine. But not with lies. Because I hadn't told her what I found in her coat pocket last week. I hadn't mentioned the envelope marked for later. I hadn't told her I heard everything she said to her friend from work on speakerphone. And I sure as hell hadn't told her what I planned next. I didn't leave the bedroom for the next 2 hours. I just sat there at the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, letting the echo of her sobs float through the hallway like ghosts. I thought I'd feel empowered. Strong. Righteous. Instead, I felt like I had just set fire to the only house I'd ever known. And somehow I was both the one holding the match and the one trapped inside. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, processing everything. Because deep down I knew the moment she dropped to her knees wasn't grief. It wasn't heartbreak. It was panic. The kind of panic that only kicks in when the illusion starts crumbling and you realize the backup plan you had, the one that involved someone else quietly waiting in the wings, might not work anymore. She eventually knocked on the door. Soft. Hesitant. Like I was a stranger she was scared to approach. Darvin, can I come in? She asked, her voice still shaky. I didn't answer immediately. I needed control not over her, but over myself. I knew the moment she started talking I'd want to believe her. I'd want to soothe her. It's what I'd always done. She cries, I apologize. She retreats, I advance. I've spent years convincing myself that if I was just a little more patient, a little more understanding, she'd return to who she was when we first met. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. And maybe she never did. When I finally opened the door, she stood there, eyes red, arms crossed like she was cold even though the heater was on. "Please," she whispered, "can we talk?" I let her in. She sat at the edge of the bed like it wasn't hers. Like she was visiting a hospital room. "I didn't cheat on you," she said suddenly, as if rehearsed. "I know you think something's going on. But nothing happened, Darvin. I've been distant, yes, and that's on me. But it wasn't like that. It's not what you think." I looked at her and nodded slowly. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to hear every lie before I showed her the truth. I reached into the drawer and took out my old phone. Not the one I use daily. My backup. It's an older model, cracked at the corner, barely holds a charge. But it had something she'd forgotten about, something I had forgotten about too until last night. A voicemail. Weeks ago, I had accidentally dialed her work number from that phone. She didn't pick up, but the line stayed open just long enough to capture a voice message. I didn't realize it until I plugged the phone in last night while cleaning out old chargers. And there it was. A 53-second recording. I tapped play while brushing my teeth, not expecting anything. What I heard nearly made me drop the brush. Lorna's voice, laughing, not her usual dry, distant laugh, but that full, warm, breathy one I hadn't heard in ages. Then a man's voice, low and intimate. "You're really going to keep pretending he doesn't suspect?" She replied, "He won't do anything. He never does. He's soft. He'll blame himself before he blames me." The audio cut after that. Probably a signal issue. But it was enough. Enough to make everything click into place. Her sudden warmth that morning. Her panic. Her begging. It wasn't about me. It was about her losing control over the narrative. I handed her the phone. She stared at it, then slowly pressed play. I watched her face drain of color like water slipping down a drain. Her mouth opened slightly. Then she hit pause halfway through. As if stopping it would undo what had been said. "I don't remember that," she said, her voice cracking. "It's out of context. It's not what it sounds like." "It's exactly what it sounds like," I cut in, my voice quiet, steady. "You knew I wouldn't leave. So you kept me around. Until now." She stood up, breathing hard, pacing. "Darvin, listen, people say things in moments. That doesn't mean I don't care. I've been under so much stress. With work. With us. You've been distant too, No, I interrupted again. "Don't do that. Don't pull me into your mess to make yourself feel better. I wasn't distant. I was invisible. And you liked it that way because it gave you room to rewrite the rules without telling me." Her eyes filled again, but I was immune now. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. "I'm not staying here tonight," I said calmly. "And I won't be here tomorrow either. I've already called an attorney. You'll get the papers by the end of the week." And then, for the first time in this whole unraveling mess, she stopped talking. She didn't reach for me. She didn't scream. She just stared like she had stepped into someone else's nightmare and didn't know how to escape. But it wasn't hers. It was mine. One I had been living in for years and only just woke up from. I didn't go to a hotel that night. I couldn't. The idea of being surrounded by beige wallpaper and vending machines while my marriage collapsed in the background felt too manufactured. Instead, I drove for hours. Through back roads, past closed gas stations and quiet storefronts. No music. No destination. Just silence and the low hum of my engine. Around midnight, I ended up at this 24-hour diner off Route 11, an old, faded building called Marge's Kitchen with a flickering open sign and a gravel parking lot that crunched under the tires like it hadn't been swept in months. It was empty inside except for the cook, a waitress in her 50s with a cigarette voice, and a woman sitting alone in booth 6, scribbling something into a spiral notebook. I ordered black coffee and a grilled cheese I wouldn't end up eating. I sat by the window, hands wrapped around the mug, trying to feel something real. The glass was cold against my knuckles. The steam fogged my glasses. My wedding ring kept twisting on my finger no matter how still I sat. Then the woman at booth 6 stood up and walked past me to the register. Her eyes met mine for a split second. Not flirtatious, not probing, just human. She had one of those tired faces that looked like it had seen a few earthquakes and kept standing anyway. As she waited for her receipt, she turned and asked, "You okay?" I wasn't. Not even close. But I nodded anyway. She glanced down at my left hand, then back at my face. "You look like you just swallowed your own future." I let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, wasn't quite a sob. "Close." She hesitated, then came closer, lowering her voice. "If she broke you, don't try to make sense of it tonight. Just survive it. The sense part comes later." I didn't know how to respond. I didn't even know why she said it. Maybe she'd seen this look before. Maybe she'd worn it once herself. Then she walked out and I never saw her again. But I remembered those words. Because they were the first that didn't feel like a performance. Not pity. Not blame. Just acknowledgement. The next morning I returned home. Lorna wasn't there. Her car was gone. The kitchen was spotless, like it had been staged for a showing. The divorce paper I'd printed was sitting on the island, still folded, untouched. She hadn't signed it. She hadn't even moved it. Just left it sitting there like a dare. Then I noticed something new. A small cardboard box on the dining table. No note. Just a plain brown box with my name on it written in her handwriting. I opened it slowly, expecting. I don't know what. A letter. A confession. Some dramatic gesture. Instead, inside were things I hadn't seen in years. The movie ticket from our first date, creased and yellowed. A Polaroid of us at her cousin's wedding, both of us drunk and grinning. A rock I once gave her from a beach we walked barefoot on during a spontaneous weekend trip. And at the very bottom, my grandmother's ring. The one I gave her when I proposed. It didn't come with a letter. Just a quiet, heavy kind of message, I know it's over. I stared at that box for a long time. And as much as I wanted to feel closure, or anger, or even relief, what I felt instead was this haunting question I couldn't shake. When did we start curating our love instead of living it? I didn't call her. I didn't text her. Instead, I called the attorney again and told him I wanted to move forward, no delays. I had spent too much time trapped in maybes and half-truths. I wanted something definite now, even if that something was the end. But life wasn't done with surprises. Because that evening, as I was taking the trash out, I heard a voice from across the street. Mr. Ellman, our retired neighbor, waving his arm with an envelope in hand. Hey, Darvin. This came to our mailbox by mistake. From that travel place, the one by the library. I took it. Thanked him. Thought nothing of it. Until I got inside and opened it. And inside was something I hadn't expected. A receipt for a third ticket to the same cabin resort. Same weekend. Same room booking code. 1 bed. But 3 guests. I read it twice. Then a third time. Then I sat down. Suddenly, everything I thought I understood about this situation, about her, about me, about who the other man was, started to blur. There was someone else. Not just one person. Not just Jake or Rob or whoever I assumed was behind this. There was another layer to this. One I hadn't even begun to uncover. I sat at the table with that receipt in my hand, staring at the bolded line near the bottom that read, 3 guests. 1 room. Lakeside Springs Chalet, Cabin 14. My first thought was maybe it was a mistake. A clerical error. Maybe the company double-booked. Maybe it was something completely innocent. My second thought was, Darvin, stop pretending. I grabbed my laptop and opened a blank search tab. My hands were sweating so badly I could barely type. I entered the name of the resort, navigated their booking portal, and used the confirmation code listed on the receipt to access the itinerary. I didn't even know that was possible until I tried. I wasn't thinking straight. I was chasing something I wasn't ready to see. There it was. A detailed itinerary with names. Lorna Merritt. Or just the letter which I'd seen in her phone before. And then the third name, the one that made me go cold. Wesley Carrick. I blinked. That name had no context for me. Not a coworker I remembered. Not a family friend. It wasn't a name that triggered anything until I clicked through my contacts and realized why it felt so off. Because it wasn't connected to her at all. It was connected to me. I knew Wesley from a few years back, someone I had met through an online logistics forum, of all things. He worked for a warehouse analytics firm in Spokane. We had exchanged tips, joked over long message threads about terrible upper management, and even met once for drinks when he happened to be in town. He was sharp. Observant. Way more charismatic than I ever was. I remember thinking if I had his confidence, maybe Lorna would look at me the way she used to. But I never said that out loud. I just admired from a distance and chalked it up to my usual insecurity. What the hell was his name doing on her resort receipt? The room spun. Had I introduced them? Had I been the idiot who handed my wife to someone else thinking I was just networking? I scoured through my texts searching Wes. The last one from him was dated 6 months ago. Appreciate the dinner. Let's catch up next time I'm in your area. I remembered that night. Lorna had joined us. We'd gone to this artsy tapas place near the river. She hadn't stopped laughing the entire time. At the time, I thought she was just trying to be supportive. That maybe she was happy to see me enjoy myself. Now I wasn't so sure. I opened her old laptop, the one she hadn't used in months. I knew the password. She never changed it. Inside her email archives, in the promotions tab of all places, was a thread from the travel company. And in the message were the names again. Lorna Merritt, R. Conrad, Wesley Carrick. 3 travelers. 2 nights. 1 cabin. No further details. No cancellation. Just silence after that. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then I shut it abruptly and pushed away from the desk. My breathing felt shallow. Like the air in the room had been sucked out. I didn't know what to do next. Who to call? Who to yell at? I just stood in the middle of the room, our room, and tried not to shatter into pieces. Because it wasn't just cheating anymore. It was something else. Something calculated. Intimate. And somehow theatrical. This was never just about growing apart. It wasn't even about one person. This was coordinated. Planned. And for some reason I felt like the joke was on me. Not because I'd been blind, but because I'd been easy to hide from. Too passive. Too kind. Too predictable. Suddenly the crying. The panic. The dropped mug. It all seemed like rehearsed damage control. Like she knew something would surface eventually and her only hope was to stay ahead of it. And then, as I was pacing the hallway, I heard the front door unlock. It was Lorna. She stepped in quietly like someone arriving late to their own funeral. We locked eyes. I didn't speak. She did. Darvin, she said, setting her purse down with trembling fingers. Before you say anything, please. I need to tell you the truth about Wesley. I didn't blink. Didn't nod. She swallowed hard. He's not just a friend. And he's not just mine. That's when the bottom of my world gave out. Because the next thing she said would turn everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my friends, and even myself completely inside out. Lorna's voice cracked when she said it, but her eyes didn't waver. That was the worst part. They weren't full of fear or shame or even the kind of panic she showed the morning I asked for a divorce. This time, her eyes were focused like she had rehearsed this moment too many times in her head to get it wrong. I took a step back. I needed space between us. My body reacted before my brain did, that involuntary step of instinct, the way you might flinch when something moves in your peripheral vision. My palms were sweating again. I felt like the walls of our house, our stupid beige-walled, picture-perfect house, were closing in on me. Say that again, I said. My voice was low even. Not because I was calm, but because I was holding something back. I didn't know what would come out if I spoke louder. She exhaled. Long and slow, like she was peeling off her own skin. You remember when you had that surgery 2 years ago? She began. I nodded once, slowly. I'd torn my meniscus while trying to finally get back into shape. It was nothing major, but it kept me off my feet for weeks. I remember being high on painkillers, foggy-brained, practically confined to the couch. She was the one who took care of me, brought me soup, changed my bandages, even helped me shower when I couldn't stand. At the time, I thought it was the most tender we'd been in months. I met him around then, she said. He messaged you on one of those forums you were in. You couldn't respond right away, so I did. He wanted to meet up about a freelance logistics project. Said it was urgent. You were too groggy to care. You told me to handle it. I remembered that vaguely, that I'd asked her to tell him I'd get back to him. I didn't think twice about it. It was a blur of gauze and pills and daytime television. That first meeting, she continued, was just that business. But then he started checking in. Asking how you were. Then asking how I was. I should have ignored him. I didn't. She paused, expecting me to say something. I didn't. I just stood there, heart thrumming against my ribs like a warning bell. I never meant to get close to him, she whispered. But it happened gradually. Texts turned into calls. Calls turned into walks. Walks turned into things I can't take back. I kept telling myself it was temporary. That I was just lonely. That you'd get better and things would go back to how they were. But when you did get better, I realized I didn't want to go back. I was shaking now. But still I said nothing. I needed her to finish. I needed the whole truth, every poisoned inch of it. But it wasn't just about the two of us anymore, she said, lowering herself into the nearest chair. Wesley, he wanted more. More. I croaked. She looked up at me. He wanted you involved. The silence that followed was unnatural. Like the air itself didn't know how to sit still anymore. What the hell are you talking about? He watched you, she said, her voice now hollow. After that dinner. The one where we all went out. He told me afterward, he said he could see it in your eyes. That you were curious. That you were soft. That you were moldable. I felt physically ill. My stomach twisted so hard I had to grab the back of a chair to stay upright. You think I started, then stopped myself. Because I didn't even know what I was asking. She stood again, stepping closer, but I recoiled. I didn't want her near me. I didn't want her breathing the same air. He thought you'd say yes, Darvin, she whispered. He told me if I just played it slow, gave it time, you'd come around. He wanted to meet again. All three of us. This trip was supposed to be the test run. My knees nearly gave out. That's what this was? I whispered. You and him, grooming me into your next. What project? She didn't answer. I backed away, grabbed my keys from the counter without thinking. My skin was crawling, my ears were ringing. I needed to leave, to scream, to burn something, anything, just to feel clean again. She followed me to the door. Darvin, I'm telling you now because I need you to understand, eh? No, I cut in, finally snapping. You don't get to explain it now. You don't get to look me in the eye and pretend this was for my benefit. You cheated. You lied. You sat next to me on the couch while I was healing and building us back up while secretly planning to feed me into something I never consented to. You crossed a line, Lorna. Not one. Not two. You burned the whole goddamn field and danced in the smoke. She froze in the doorway, shaking. And that's when I said the last words I ever intended to say to her face to face. You don't hug me anymore, Lorna. You haven't for months. But now I know why. You weren't withholding affection. You were redirecting it. Just not where I could see. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. And this time I didn't look back. I didn't sleep that night. Not in the car. Not on my friend Jarrell's lumpy guest couch. Not even with the help of the cheap bourbon I picked up at a corner store I didn't recognize. I just laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, running it all over again in my head like some grotesque movie reel stuck on loop. The confession. The way she looked at me like it was some mercy to tell the truth. The name Wesley echoing louder than her voice ever did. She said it wasn't just hers. She said he wanted me involved. Every time I thought I'd found the bottom of this hole, another floor dropped out from under me. But nothing prepared me for the message that hit my inbox the next morning. I had just poured burnt coffee from Jarrell's crusty machine when I saw it. A new email notification. The subject line was simple. You deserve the whole picture. It was from Wesley. I didn't even remember giving him my personal email, but there it was, his name, his smug little profile image, and a timestamp that said it had been sent at 3:04 a.m. I clicked it. The message itself was only one line. I wanted you to understand how we got here. There was never anything malicious. Open the file. Attached was a single zip folder titled Darvin. Zip. I froze. My thumb hovered over the trackpad. Every instinct in my body screamed not to open it. But another voice, quieter, sharper, whispered, you need to see. You need to know what they thought of you when you weren't in the room. I opened the file. Inside were 6 items. A screenshot of a text conversation between Lorna and Wesley. A video, just under 7 minutes. 2 audio files, PDF, and a Word document titled Darvin. Psychological notes. My hands trembled as I double-clicked the Word document first. It wasn't formatted like anything casual. It was structured like a report. It had dates, observations, even bulleted lists. It read like some twisted experiment diary. Wesley had been studying me. Subject, Darvin M. Observation period, August, December. Primary observations. Demonstrates classic conflict-avoidant tendencies. Internalizes rejection instead of responding emotionally. Views emotional intimacy as reward-based. If he does more, he believes affection will return. Appears unaware of spousal emotional withdrawal. Highly moldable, likely due to prolonged emotional starvation. Couldn't breathe. My chest physically ached. This wasn't just cheating. This was clinical. He had picked me apart like I was a character in a book, and Lorna had apparently handed him the damn pen. I opened the text screenshot next. Lorna, he'll never say no. That's the problem. Wesley, that's not a problem. That's potential. Lorna, you sure he won't freak out? Wesley, even if he does, he'll blame himself. That's what makes him perfect. Closed it. I actually gagged. The coffee went cold in my hand. My body was still, but my mind was screaming. I had been reduced to material. Profile. A case study. A project for 2 people who claimed to care about me, in their own twisted ways. The video, I couldn't bring myself to watch it yet. Instead, I opened the PDF. It was a trip itinerary, but not the resort I'd seen before. This was a new trip, booked just days ago. It wasn't for the 3 of us. It was just for Wesley and me. The heading read, Lakeside Springs Retreat, Partner Decompression, and Emotional Realignment Experience. I read that again. Partner decompression. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Below, it was a breakdown of the activities he'd planned. Day 1. Truth Circle. Participant shares recent emotional detachment. Day 2. Boundary exercises. Redefine resistance through reflection and touch. Day 3. Alignment breakfast. Mutual understanding and role deconstruction. He had scheduled my recovery without even asking if I was broken. Wesley didn't just think I was manipulatable. He thought I was a character he could rewrite, that I'd just fall into place once the pages turned. I slammed the laptop shut so hard Jarrell walked in from the hallway asking if I'd broken something. I told him everything. He just stared at me for a long time, then finally said, "You were never their person, Darv. You were their project. That's not love. That's theater. And you're not the one who should be ashamed." I nodded, but it didn't land yet. Because I still hadn't opened the video. I waited until Jarrell left for work. I pulled the laptop back open. Double-clicked the video file. Full screen. The footage was from a hotel room. Propped phone. Low lighting. Lorna was sitting on the bed. Wesley was off camera but speaking. "You're sure he won't open it early?" he asked. "He trusts too much," she answered. "He'll wait until we say." "Good," Wesley said. "He needs to see that it's not betrayal. It's evolution." Then Lorna looked into the camera and said the line that broke something inside me forever. "If he can't accept this version of us, he's not worth the next one." The video cut out. No ending. No explanation. Just that. That was their logic. Their self-justifying manifesto. That my pain was just part of their next chapter. But I wasn't going to be a footnote in their story. It took me hours to move after that video ended. I just sat there, hands in my lap, the soft hum of the refrigerator behind me, a dull ache pulsing behind my eyes like my brain itself was trying to crawl away from what it had just witnessed. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't anything. I was hollowed out. Like someone had cut the center from me and just left the shell upright, still blinking, still breathing. "If he can't accept this version of us, he's not worth the next one." Those were her exact words. Not whispered. Not hesitant. But direct. Cold. As if I was a placeholder in her story, something to discard once the rewrite began. All this time, I thought I was just losing her to another man. Turns out I was being rewritten out of my own life. But here's the thing. I didn't flip the table. I didn't smash the laptop. I didn't go drive to his address and threaten him. I didn't even text her. Not because I was noble or calm or enlightened, but because I finally understood something deep and ugly and liberating. I wasn't fighting for her. I was fighting for the idea of her. And that version didn't exist anymore. That night, I did something I never thought I would. I called an old friend from college, Ingrid, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. We used to be inseparable before life scattered us across different cities and messy obligations. She was married now, had 2 kids, and ran a small design studio out of her basement. I just needed to talk to someone who remembered who I was before I lost myself in someone else. I told her everything. I expected shock. Disbelief. Maybe even the awkward, "Oh, wow," that people say when they don't know what else to offer. Instead, she sighed and said, "You know, she used to dim you even back then. You just smiled through it." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. She told me that during the one time she'd met Lorna back at a reunion event 7 years ago, she saw how I quieted down around her. How Lorna would answer questions meant for me. How she steered conversations back to herself and framed our relationship like a comedy where I was the bumbling sidekick and she was the charming lead. "You always looked like you were trying to stay in the room," Ingrid said gently. "Not like you were in it." That hit harder than any lie Lorna had told me. I thanked her. We hung up, and I knew what I had to do next. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. Not just for me. For everyone they might try to pull into this delusional story they were writing. So I put everything together, the emails, the psychological breakdown Wesley wrote, the itinerary, the texts, the video, and packaged it. Not to share publicly. Not yet. I wasn't trying to ruin reputations or spark chaos. I just wanted it documented. Time-stamped. Filed away. For protection. Then I sent it to Lorna. No message. Just the folder. Less than 5 minutes later, she called me. I didn't answer. She called again. Then texted. "Darvin, please. That wasn't for you. That was private. You weren't meant to see that." That sentence alone told me everything I needed. She didn't say it wasn't true. She didn't apologize. She wasn't even embarrassed that she'd said it. She was upset that I had witnessed it. Wesley followed suit a few hours later. Wesley, I think you're misinterpreting what we were trying to build. There was never any harm intended. We saw something deeper in you and we wanted to invite you into that space. Invite? Into that space? Like I was being handed a golden ticket into a burning building. I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the next day talking to a lawyer. Not just about the divorce, but about digital harassment. About unsolicited psychological profiling. About potential lines that had been crossed, legally and ethically. He told me something that stuck with me. This isn't about legality. It's about narrative control. They built a version of you that was easier to manipulate. Now that you've reclaimed your voice, they'll try to reshape you again, this time as the angry ex, the unstable man, the bitter victim. Don't engage with that. Just build your own version louder. So that's what I did. I sent my final message to both of them. One email. No attachments. No rants. Just this. You're both free now to create whatever version of me you want. But know this, I'm not chasing, correcting, or defending anymore. You don't get to narrate my story. I do. And then I blocked them both. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. No dreams. Just breath. Because silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's what truth sounds like once all the noise is gone. 3 weeks have passed since I sent that final message, the one where I let go. Not dramatically. Not in flames. But in silence. And in that silence, something remarkable started to happen. I began hearing myself again. Not the version they studied, poked, analyzed, and dismissed. Not the version I twisted into knots to stay relevant in someone else's narrative. I mean the real me. The one I forgot I was before I became a placeholder in my own marriage. I hadn't realized how deeply I'd vanished into their projections until I stopped responding to them and started responding to myself. I moved out of Jarrell's place a week ago. Found a modest rental on the edge of town, nothing fancy. It smells like cedar and old books and the water heater groans like it's telling stories. But it's mine. Every box I unpacked felt like I was assembling a new life brick by brick, and every item I chose not to bring from the old house was a line drawn in the sand between who I used to be and who I was becoming. The divorce is in motion. Quick, uncontested. I offered her what was fair and nothing more. No arguments. No more bargaining with ghosts. When her lawyers sent the final draft, I read it once, signed it, and mailed it back. Done. Wesley? I haven't heard from him again. I think he realized the show was over and no one was watching anymore. As for Lorna, she sent one last message a few days ago. From a new number. Just one sentence. You were never supposed to end like this. I didn't reply. Because she was right. I wasn't supposed to end. I was supposed to begin. Ingrid and I have kept talking, nothing romantic, just real, unfiltered. No hidden scripts. We've met up a few times for coffee and she's reminded me how easy conversations can feel when they're not loaded with manipulation or expectations. She asked me once what I wanted now, not career-wise or with women or finances, but really wanted. It was the first time I'd been asked that in years. I told her I want to be boring and free. I want to come home to quiet and not wonder if it means danger. I want to laugh again and know it's real. And guess what? Last night I laughed. Not forced. Not out of awkwardness. Just pure, ridiculous, honest laughter. I burned dinner trying to follow a recipe from a video with no sound and ended up eating toast and pickles while watching the dumbest sitcom reruns in a hoodie with a hole in the sleeve. And it felt like winning. I still think about everything that happened. Of course I do. Sometimes it creeps in during the quiet moments, the betrayal, the manipulation, the way I let it all fester for so long without speaking up. But now I speak. Not to them. To me. I speak gently. Kindly. But firmly. I tell myself I deserved better. And then, the bigger miracle, I believe it. So to anyone reading this who's stuck in something quiet and soul-numbing, waiting for some explosion to justify leaving, don't wait for the fireworks. The quiet realization that you're worth more? That's the real beginning. That's your first breath after drowning. As for me, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. I didn't need an apology or a reckoning. I just needed distance. And now that I have it, I've never felt closer to who I was always meant to be. Darwin. A man no longer waiting for a hug that never comes. A man finally holding himself.